Hello everybody, Shalom from Tel Aviv. My name is Martin Salomon. I'm the director of the Romanian Cultural Institute. We are currently on Zoom and streamed live on the official YouTube channel of the Romanian Cultural Institute in Tel Aviv. We are hosting today a very interesting workshop, actually a masterclass with registered Israeli participants, students and young professionals mainly. And the subject of this masterclass is a very, very actual and very challenging, forming and changing the culture of organizations and society. The masterclass will be held in English by an environment activist and consultant for sustainability from Romania, Mr. Csibi Magor. Magor was invited as well about 2 weeks ago to another online event organized in Israel, here in Israel by Eco Week, where the Romanian Cultural Institute was a partner, was an international organization, and Mr. Csibi delivered a lecture about environmental issues. His professional background is based in civil engagement, in civil society, non-governmental organizations. He used to be a country manager for Romania of the World Wildlife Fund, the largest nature conservation organization in the world for 7 years, I believe, between 2010 and 2017. Then he became the executive director of the World Wildlife Fund in South Korea. Since 2018, if I'm not wrong, he leads the leadership department of Trend Consult in Bucharest with the mission of changing the culture in organizations and societies. I have to add to this impressive resume the fact that he started his career as a politician, a member of the European Parliament, vice chair of the Committee of Environment, Public Health, Food Safety, and I met him first as actually his work as reading his blog in the Romanian media, online media, back in, I think, 2009, 2010. Think outside the box. He's an outside the box thinker, as you will see. So thank you very much, Magor, for accepting our invitation. I'm very, very excited about this workshop and very happy that you accepted our invitation. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here with you. First of all, I was invited here. As I understand, you have like coffee evenings, so I would like to be as relaxed as possible and less academic as possible. The whole idea, what we were discussing in Eco Week, and what sparked the whole idea, is how are we able to change? Because we see that the degradation of nature is bigger and bigger, and action is very, very delayed. And I can say that I worked in many environmental organizations, in many movements. I think I have more than a decade and a half since I'm working in environmental issues. I was working, as Martin said, in the parliament on that. I was working in NGOs on that. And what I do realize is that the main issue is not that we do not care about nature. The main issue is that many people do not care about anything else but himself. And it's not just because we are egoistic, but because we have a construction which makes us to focus too much on ourselves and focus too much on our own issues, and much lesser to our community, much lesser to the society that we are living in, and much lesser we are paying attention at how can we contribute to that. So this is why we started, or when I started to think in Korea, what will be my next career move, I realized that it's not about making people be involved in environmental movement, it's about changing culture. Why is that so important? And this is what we will be discussing this evening. Why is that so important to change culture? What is culture? How behaviors, human behaviors, are generated via human interactions, and how can we change them? So I think that we will have an hour and a half about this. But what I would also like, when you don't understand anything, when you do want to add something, when do you want to provoke me, just hit the unmute button and just intervene, because this is the whole idea, you know, to have a dynamic discussion about the whole issue. So I will start by sharing my screen. And as I said, my philosophy is that if we are able to change culture, we are able to change the results. It doesn't matter if we are talking about organization or society, and it doesn't matter if we are talking about the goals of our organization or we are talking about the survival of our society. And I will start with a very personal story. When I was a little kid, I had relatively big issues with my weight. So all my life, I was dreaming somehow, you know, to be a fat man, because my uncle had a huge belly, and he was my idol. And since I was a little kid, I wanted to grow a big belly like my uncle, because I always considered him a very, very imposing, a very nice guy. And I said, I want to be like him. Around 14, I somehow reached my goal, and I was looking like my uncle. But you know, when you are in puberty, when you are 14, when you are starting to discover girls, when you are starting to discover, when you start to compare yourself to people around you, you realize that that weight was not necessarily an asset for me. So I realized that I want to get rid now of all the weight. Although, you know, in sports, for instance, I was doing judo back then. If you had more than 50 kilos, you were in the plus division. It meant that we were so few people as much overweight as me. If I showed at any contest, I was guaranteed a bronze or a silver medal, even if I didn't win anything, because we were 2 or 3 people always in the very overweight category. But back then, I said, okay, now I want to change this. I was a small kid, not very, very tall, with a huge weight. And I always, every day, repeated to myself, I want to change this. Unfortunately, I discovered back at that time, there is no button on myself which I can push to change my weight. So it doesn't matter how much I want. It doesn't matter how much I'm able to define the desired result for me. This cannot be changed by a button. This cannot be changed by a decision. So what I did is that I went to a nutritionist. And the nutritionist said to me, okay, what do you need to do right now? You have a big goal, but you need to break down your goal in lower KPIs or lower sub-goals. You need to measure the concentration of the sugar in your blood every day. You need to measure the fat percentage in your blood. You need to measure the BMI in your blood. But the whole idea, even if I had much more accurate, much better information about what do I need to do, my weight still hasn't changed. And why is that? Because the only thing which actually can change your weight are your habits. What are you eating every day? What are you drinking every day? And how much sport do you do every day? This is if you have a normal metabolism. So the whole idea, it doesn't matter if you have a very well-defined goal. It doesn't matter if you break down the goals to a good strategy with very good KPIs. If I do not eat repeatedly every day healthy foods, if I do not drink healthy drinks and I do not exercise, my weight will remain the same. And this is what I want to emphasize. It is not enough from time to time, exceptionally, to introduce good habits in my behavior. It's not enough to eat only on Sundays some salad with clear water and do a lot of exercise. If the rest of the week I'm living my old ways, in the old ways, nothing will change. So all the habits or all the individual behaviors must be repeated in a very consequent way. And why do I say this? Because many organizations around us, and even in the society, we are very, very good in claiming the results that we want to reach. We are saying these are the results that we want to reach. For instance, an organization is saying we want to grow our profit, we want to double the profit for the next year. And what we are doing is we are creating very, very good KPIs. And we say in order to double the profit next year, we need to, I don't know, raise the sales by 21%. We need to reduce expenses by I don't know how much percent, and so on and so on. We do very good KPIs. And most of the organizations are monitoring the results and the KPIs, and very few of them are monitoring the habits of the people in the organization. And if we are looking, if you are looking at my example, I wanted to lose weight and I was unable to lose weight because I was focusing on the desired result. And I was focusing on reading a lot about how should I lose weight, but I was not doing the work every day. This is what we are doing at organizational level very, very often. We are obsessing about defining results, about creating the circumstances, but we are not looking at what people are doing every day. And if you are looking at climate change, then it becomes even more clear. If you watch, for instance, from the last 20 years, what happened, we had the Kyoto Protocol, we had a lot of meetings in Paris, we had the Copenhagen meeting, we have many, many high-level meetings when we are defining new and new results. We are going to reduce the pollution by 20%, no, by 25%, by 2050, now by 2060, we are going to reduce by 80%. And then we are defining clearer KPIs. We are saying, okay, and how do we are going to do that? We are going to reduce the emissions of the cement industry by this big. We are going to reduce the heavy industry emissions. We are going to do, and so on and so on. And what is missing is that we are not implementing almost anything in reality. So we are doing the very, very classic mistake of defining very, very clearly the desired results. We are breaking it down into KPIs, but the habits are the one which are missing. And this is why it's very, very important for us to try to figure it out, how our habits, how our individual behaviors generated in organizations, in society. Because if we are able to understand how behaviors are generated, maybe we can make or maybe we can figure it out much more easier how we can change them. And the whole idea is that we have a very interesting experience. In a setting, we are bringing a lot of people into a room, and we are giving very, very few instructions to the people, almost no instructions to the people, and we are saying a desired goal. Your goal is to become elder. We are not explaining to them what means to become an elder. We are not explaining to them what are the rules. We are not explaining to them what they should do, and we just withdraw. This is an exercise to see how behaviors are generated. And you stand back in a corner as the facilitator or as the trainer, and you notice the room. Usually I'm monitoring the time when the first behavior will appear in the room, because when everybody is sitting down, at some point in the room, people start to move around, people start to whisper, people start to point at you and say, something is wrong, he's a bit crazy, he forgot to give us the instruction, what is happening, and so on and so on. And at some point, one guy stands up. This is a new individual behavior because everybody in the room is sitting, and at some point, one guy is standing. When that one guy is standing in the room, what do you think it will happen? And you can intervene if you want, because I would like this to be interactive.
Other people will stand up too.
Not yet. What is the first reaction when somebody stands up in a room where everybody is sitting?
Other people tell them to sit down and shut up.
Before that,
everyone will look at him.
exactly. Everybody is looking at the new behavior, the new guy. Then where they look next? What is the next? Everybody looks at the guy, and then where?
They look at the lecturer.
Exactly. Or so they look at me, or if there is a boss, there is their head, their manager in the room, everybody turns to the manager because they look at the sources of power. If nothing will happen, after a short break, another person will stand up. This is how we define the name of this person is the first follower. Again, the same procedure happens again. People look at the new guy standing up, then look at me, then look at the manager, nothing happens. Then another guy stands up, the second follower. When 3 guys are standing in the room, we are saying a new trend was created. Because psychologically, and this is measured, if 3 guys are already standing, the 4th guy is safe. So no matter what will happen, if you are the 4th guy standing up and the trainer will realize that you are doing something terribly wrong and he will say, okay, what are you doing? I never said that you can stand up. Even if there will be some negative consequences, usually the first 3 guys are taking the fall. If you are the 4th one, you are safe. So what is happening after 3 guys are already standing? We have a trend in the room, and if the trainer won't intervene and the manager won't intervene, we will have a new behavioral norm, a new habit in the room. People will start to stand. Usually I look at my watch. What is the moment when the first guy stands up? This also shows a bit how much autonomy, how much initiative there is in that team. And then I measure the time, the first follower, second follower, and at some point, almost everybody in the room will stand. And then a very interesting thing will happen. Everybody is standing on their feet, and after a while, they will start to look at the guys who are still sitting, and they will start to comment on them. Why are you still sitting? Why are you not with us? Although no instructions were given, because a new behavioral norm was created in the room. And this changes the environment in the room. This means that if a new person walks into the room and sees that everybody is standing, everybody is walking around, it won't even cross his mind to sit down, because in that organization, in that culture, in that moment, the environment is that people are standing up and walking around. And this is what we call, the loop of culture. And there is a very interesting video on YouTube. You could watch it. Why people behave sheep. One of the universities did a psychological research. It's very interesting. People are in a waiting room, but all the people are actors. And at every 1.5 minutes, a red lamp is blinking, a sound is beeping, beep, and everybody stood up just for a second and then sits down. And the new guy comes in, he's not an actor. The waiting room is full, sound is beeping, light is blinking, everybody stands up, everybody sits down. The guy looks at everybody the first time, looks at everybody the second time, at the third time, he also raises like everybody else in the room. Then the doctor starts to call in patients one by one. And at some point, the guy remains alone in the waiting room. And when he hears the beep, he just sits up and sits down again, although nobody is there. And the research should have stopped there, but it didn't, because a new guy comes in, the sound is beeping, the old guy is standing and sitting, and he asks, if you don't mind to ask, why are you doing this? And the person who is not an actor says, I have no idea. But when I came here, everybody was doing this. You cannot imagine. It was the whole waiting room was filled, and everybody was just standing at every blink and at every beep. And I thought that this is what we should do. The new guy thinks a bit and starts also to follow the routine. So the whole idea, already in the room, nobody knows why they were doing that. And this is a very, very important human desire or human behavior. We want to fit in. When we walk into a new room, when we walk into a new organization, our utmost desire is to be accepted. Our utmost desire is to fit in. So this is why when you walk into a new environment, a new organization, you will observe how people behave and you start to follow their behavior. But the whole idea that in this loop, there are some superheroes. You mentioned very, very well that people, when the first people gets up, everybody looks at the moderator or everybody looks at the manager. At that point, if the leader of the room, if the leader of the organization is giving a clear signal if that behavior is wanted or unwanted in an organization, he can clearly put an end to that behavior. If the manager in the room, or if the trainer says, nobody said that you can stand, please sit down and continue, most probably the person will sit and there won't be a first follower or a second follower because the instructions are very clear and you are out of the norms if you are doing that. It's exactly the same in any kind of organization and even in the society. If a new behavior arises, like for instance, when I was living in Korea, at some point, everybody in the morning in Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, everybody is going to the work with plastic cups, with plastic straws. And there, at some point, some celebrities, which are leaders for many, many people, started to campaign saying that straws are killing wildlife in the ocean. What happened in a matter of few weeks? A huge cultural shift happened and plastic straws started to disappear. Big companies said we are going to phase out plastic straws by 2025 and so on and so on. But the public opinion in a very, very short amount of time did a very big switch because a new behavior appeared, which was encouraged by people who they consider leader. Or another example, in Monaco, in Europe, when the prince said in a television interview, please do not eat tuna anymore because tuna is disappearing from the oceans, almost overnight tuna disappeared from all the restaurants. So this was a new desired behavior asked by one of the leaders. And people said, okay, it's very reasonable what he's asking. Please don't do that anymore. And at some point, if you ask for tuna in a restaurant, not knowing what just happened there, people were looking very strangely at you, like, what's with this behavior? Although a week before, everybody was doing exactly the same thing. So the whole idea is that every organization, every society, every small community has persons, and it isn't necessarily the person who is in power, where we tend to look in order to say to us if our behavior will be validated or will be invalidated. So this is why I do think that it's really important to understand how culture looks like. What are the main sources of the culture? And this is one of the key things in the top of the star, because this is a good culture. This is the culture that we desire. In the top of the star is how leaders behave. And it doesn't matter if we are talking about a family, if we are talking about a small organization, a big organization, or a country. One of the biggest reasons that we do not have any kind of change on environmental issues is that our leaders are saying one thing and doing another thing. When Al Gore did his movie about climate change and everybody was very touched and people started to talk, then it appeared that he's flying all over the world, his ranch is consuming a lot of energy and he's not walking the talk. And people were disappointed and people were confused because at the point when people are talking one thing and doing another thing, you are not implied to follow him. It's very, very hard to follow somebody who says one thing and does another thing. And every organization, we can see that we have some, and you can see down at the aspirational level, we have aspirational values. Every heads of state is saying, we want to live in a society which is in harmony with nature. We want to reduce pollution and so on and so on. But the problem is, do we put our own behavior behind that? Do we change the real values of our society? Because it's very, very hard at one point to say that we want, our aspirational value is that we want to live in harmony with nature, but we are investing in coal power. Because the real value is where you put your money in. In a society, doesn't matter what is your aspirational value in an organization, doesn't matter what is your aspirational value if you don't put your money, if you don't put your behavior next to it. Like for instance, in an organization when I entered, they said innovation is our value. I went to Korea because innovation, that's a value. I thought that I can innovate a lot. This was the aspirational value. This was expressed in the vision, mission, objectives. This was put on the walls. But the whole idea, when you enter the organization, you notice that the organization has a structure. And they said, okay, you want to innovate. Great. We have a very good chart for that. You need to go to room number 10, ask a form. You will complete the form. The form will go to a commission, and the commission will decide what will happen with your innovation. So the whole idea is that you just want to innovate, but you realize that there is a structure in your organization who has a lot of procedures, processes, policies, and so on, which already puts a very big brake on innovation. Then somebody comes here and says, we have some real values, so how do we act in our organization? If you go to that guy and you give your idea directly to him, you can shortcut the whole thing. So this is the real value. How do we behave in the organization? Then there is the leadership behavior. You know, we have an old CEO who is saying yes or no, regardless the procedures, regardless the real values. And in the end, you need to have some skills for that. And the problem is, when you walk into a corporation, if you walk into a political organization, if you walk into the government, you have some aspirational values on the walls. They are saying we care about people. We care about, I don't know, empathy. We care about, and big and nice words. The problem is, in every organization, in every group, there is a gap between what do we say about us and actually what is happening with us. And the bigger the gap between the aspirational values and the real values, the bigger the setup of suffering is for the people. Because we never have, so all the aspirational values are always positive. And when you go to a new organization, when you go to, or when you commit to a political cause, when you commit to an NGO cause, you always go there for the declared values. And if you notice that the values are not actually applied in practice, you will tend to become unhappy. Everybody knows how hurtful it is when you walk into an organization and it's huge on the wall people, and you actually know that people are not treated there very, very well. I remember I walked into a very huge corporation, and it said, again, people big on the wall, and it was a small a sign saying direct line to the CEO, and it was the number of the CEO. And I said, oh my God, this is absolutely fantastic organization who actually lives up to his value. I was waiting there for entering to meeting the board, and I was just talking a bit with the people at the reception, and I asked, okay, does a lot of people call the CEO every day? And they said, well, there is a small problem. I said, okay, what is the problem? Yeah, the number is real, but the problem is that our CEO speaks only Russian. And I said, okay, and how many people in the organization are speaking Russian? And they said, well, two, but all of them are in the very top management. So they are anyway every day talking to the CEO. So, you know, you had something put on the wall which looked very, very nice. You can directly call to a CEO. But the problem was there was no language. There was no direct bridge. It was just a very nice thing declared towards the public, but it was not lived in reality. And, you know, if you go to the normal Harvard school, says organizations are created around a vision, or societies are created around the vision. Usually we are saying, I don't know, an organization can say our vision is to have clean water for all Africa. In Europe, an organization say, I want to end poverty in all Europe, or whatever, a very, very nice goal. And we define some results, as I already said. After you have the vision, you say, okay, what results do we need to achieve? And we are saying, okay, then we have a vision and we are going to create a mission, which is not just about how do we see the world in 10 or 20 years. It's about what is our role. What do we actually do to make that vision become a reality? After we have the mission, we do a very good strategy, which we break down to objectives. And even we go that far that we are saying to the people which are the tasks they should do every day. And we are enforcing all this with rules, processes, and policies. And what we see is that the line is not going towards the results, but is going next to the results. So we are getting some results, but never the results that we imagined. And why is that? Because we tend to forget that results are not coming from papers. Results are not coming from very well-defined missions, strategy, objectives, and tasks. They are all needed. But results in organizations and in society are always generated by how people behave every day. And this is a very crucial thing. Yves Moriot, the CEO or a managing partner of Boston Consulting Group, said a few months ago that one of the biggest mistakes that we are making today is that we are creating strategies on how people should behave, not on how they behave. So a manager from an office or a leader from an office says, everybody in my organization should do this, should behave this way. And they are making plans for how they should behave. And they fail to notice how people in the organizations are actually behaving. You know, we are saying people should not litter. And it's very wonderful, they should not. But if we make all our strategy, objective, and tasks on people should not litter, and we don't notice that people are actually littering every day, then we are always going to miss the results. So one of the first things that we should do, and every leader in any organization or in a society should do, is to notice the behavior of the people and make plans, not in parallel with the behaviors of everybody, but trying to understand from where behaviors are coming. Because behaviors, as we already said, are coming from some habits. Like my habit is, every day I go to bed at 10 p.m. This is my habit. I wake up at 6. This is my habit. You can, if you know me, you already know this about me. If you make a plan for me to work until 11 p.m., very probably you will miss your goal. Very probably I will not be productive at all. If you don't understand how people behave, what are their habits? And all of our habits come from some beliefs. I believe I'm going to bed because I believe that sleep is very, very crucial for my health, for my thinking, for my results, and so on and so on. And there are some values. If we ignore the values of the people, the beliefs, the habits, and the behaviors, we will never reach the results that we are going for. And you can see this very, very clearly right now, that one part of the world is talking almost exclusively about ration, saying we should rationalize everything, we should think logically, we should go this way, science says something, we have the numbers and so on. And a big part of the society is rejecting that, because they say, okay, but we have some values and we have some beliefs. And the problem is, if your values and beliefs are contradicting with hard facts, you will still choose your values and beliefs. And the whole idea is I'm not saying that you should have left or right. I'm saying that every organization, every society, every group has a structure and has culture. Culture is about behaviors, habits, beliefs, values. And the other one is about mission, strategy, objectives, tasks. If we want to be successful as NGOs, as professionals, or as a society, we need to invest equally in both. You cannot have only values and beliefs and habits and behaviors and expect that this will create something wonderful if you do not have structures at all. But you cannot also put all your money on structure, strategy, objectives, and rational thinking, because we see what it generates. And somehow I define that the right part of the screen, the culture part, is a leadership thing. Leaders are the one watching people, understanding, creating habits, changing beliefs, and appealing to values. And the structure part is a management part. And I do think that you know, when we are talking, for instance, about the European Union, everybody is saying the European Union is old. It is old because it's focusing almost exclusively on the structure. More rules, more policies, more laws, and you are going on and on and on with that part, and not appealing on the emotional part at all, not appealing on the values, on the beliefs, on the habits, on the behaviors. We are not explaining to the people that this is not an economic alliance, but it's about what do we believe, why are we standing together, because we have common values, we have common ideas, we respect the same things together. And this is what brings people together, values, and after that you need the structure. And I do think that any organization should look very, very often on that. Where are we standing on the left? Where are we standing on the right? And there is another thing but first, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts? Let's air a bit, let's discuss a bit, because I think that I'm going too fast.
I think you gave earlier the example of weight.
Could you speak up a little bit, because I cannot hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Not so well, Asaf.
Now, do you hear me?
Yes.
You spoke earlier. You gave the example of weight, and in this example, you are rewarded personally and directly.
Yes.
So it's very easy to convince yourself or to convince someone to do this move.
Mm-hmm.
But these environmental issues, when you do not see the object very close, and it is, I think, mistakenly considered to be an issue of privileged people living in privileged societies in rich countries.
Yes.
So I think it's this is the core problem.
Yes, I totally agree with you, but I do think that a lot of things changed lately. Just think about what we have seen last year and what we are seeing right now. Last year, we had a very, very huge fire in Siberia, affected millions of people. We had a very, very huge fire in Australia, affected millions of people. Besides that, right now we have historical wildfires in Georgia, California, so on and so on. And this is only the fire issue. I moved out from Seoul because out of 365 days of a year, 66 you cannot breathe without a mask. So we were wearing masks every day, not because of COVID. We were wearing masks because we couldn't breathe on the street of Seoul, which is one of the richest and most evolved cities in the world. So I do think that right now the benefit starts to become very, very visible. And also the price of inaction is starting to become really, really painful. Because I have personally a friend in Calistoga, California, who already lost 2 houses. And both times he said, I'm moving now in an area where it certainly cannot be any kind of fire. And 2 times did that, and 2 times he lost his house because he moved there from Abu Dhabi. He's an expat traveling. But the whole idea is that these issues are very, very real. And think about in California, which is one of the richest areas in the world, you cannot wash your car during the summer because they do not have clear water. I do not think that you need to make a very big effort there to explain. If we do this as a society, if we create some behaviors as a society, you will have a very direct benefit. In 30 years, you might be able to wash your car. And it sounds funny, but it's really not. But what I do say is that when you look at the structure part, you know, it's not enough to talk about numbers. It's not enough to talk about the hard facts. Because where we need to appeal more is what are the values that we do believe in. I have never seen a person with negative values. Nobody said about him, I want to be a bad person. I want to be, I don't know, the person who is hurting other people the most efficient way. Nobody says that. Everybody, when it's defining his own core values, all the values are always positive. And this is why it's always easier to build on values, because we just need to find where that person's values are close to what we want, or what kind of values do we want to promote. And this is always finding the common spot.
Can I say something?
Please, Liron.
Like I read a lot about capitalism and about America, the United States.
Okay.
And you're right when you're talking about one person thinking about their own values, and nobody wants to be a bad person. But when you create systems like governments or big organizations or global entities, then sometimes the entity, the one person, their values don't matter anymore. It's just about the values of the system. For example, in the United States, it's capitalism. So in the name of capitalism, they need to get more resources for energy, so their cars can, cheaply be operated and people can get through long distances cheaply.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't really care about people in the east of the world, east to Europe, and in Africa, because these resources or harvesting them might interfere with the people in these regions. So it's kind of a complex system to talk about just the individual instead of how the bigger mechanisms are creating these kind of distortions.
I agree with you partially, because Right now you can see, so first of all, capitalism, nobody is defining, I have never seen a company saying, I'm a capitalist company, defining this way. You know, every company has some aspirational values, as I already presented. So every company said, you know, even if I'm a pharma company, my goal is to make life better for all the people who need my medicine. Or if you are another company, all the value declaration of the companies are positive. When you are an individual in a company, your goal is to make sure that people in the company do not forget about that. This is the thing, because you have never seen a government saying, okay, I want to exploit all the resources. But it's up to us, you know, what kind of behaviors do we generate? Because right now, for instance, if you look at America, for the baby boomers, the car was one of the first things that they bought. So after the house, car was the second thing, you know, to consider yourself settled. It was a very, very important symbol of status. If you look at any kind of measurements to the generation right now, the young generation right now, the car is not any more important. So the behavior changed, even if all the messages go towards let's use a car, let's have a car, let's go everywhere by car, and so on and so on. More and more people are changing the behavior. And I do think, you know, that if you are in an organization, of anyone of you were in an organization, when they declared that we want the sky, but you are every day on the ground, at some point you start to wonder. You know, I could never be in an organization which values were very, very different from my values. After a while, you cannot stand it anymore. And I do think that we are right now at a point that we are less and less eager to do that, to stay in companies where values are totally different from our values. And if you, again, we look at new data, less and less young people are willing to sell their time. So less and less young people says, okay, you give me an amount of money and I will give you my time in exchange. No matter what you want me to do, I will do anything just to receive that money. Most of the people say, what is the dream that you are building? And this is exactly in our area, in the developed countries, where companies actually need to function, where companies actually need to sell their own products. And most of the companies who are not able to convince us that their values are right are suffering. If you have an article in any kind of newspaper that a clothing company is hurting people and environment, their sales will go down. And this is more and more true every day. So people are more and more sensitive, and we start to look around. But the whole idea that we need to understand that every new behavior starts from one person. And this is especially important if anyone is in leadership position, to notice the behaviors around and decide what are the behaviors I want to encourage, what are the behaviors I want to discourage. I received, for instance, a promotional package from an agency yesterday. It had a huge amount of packaging. I sent it back and I asked them, please do not do this anymore. Just think about why do you need so many packaging and what you are actually achieving just for a little bit of PR. I would appreciate much less or none. I would appreciate, you know, to live up to your values. And this kind of things can make a difference in the long term. But again, we are not thinking of changing the world. Before changing the world, we need to change our own small circles, our own small groups, our own small communities. Because I do believe that, you know, coming from politics is that the build-up is from the grassroots level upwards.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you suggesting that if we study the behaviors of a given population and then the habits and the beliefs and the roots, the values, is there an efficient way to change even a little bit the values so that it will fit our goals? Let's take, for example, the current coronavirus, the COVID-19. For example, the recommendations are, one of the main recommendations is social distancing. In particular, not praying in closed construction, in closed areas. For example, in Israel, it is forbidden to pray in synagogues, inside the synagogues. However, if we think about the values of ultra-Orthodox people in Israel, their values are contradict the rationale or the recommendations. So, of course, they believe that praying is even more important than the risk of getting the virus. So, can you manage by understanding their behavior and their habits and their beliefs to change something?
I do think that values can be changed only to a certain level. So if you have some very fundamental values, it's very hard for anybody to change them, and they can be changed only if you are going through a major shock in your life. For instance, if you lost somebody very, very close to you, if you go through a very, very traumatic event in your life, and so on, you might have some dramatic shifts even at the value level. But the whole idea is, what I'm saying is that we need to understand the values that they are generating, the behaviors in the society. So in an organization, for instance, we do that very, very often, that small and medium and big organization comes to us and says, we want to change our culture. Yes, and we are assisting them in order to change their organizational culture. We are not proposing to change the individual's values. What we are proposing is making it very, very clear what are the values, the real ones and the aspirational ones. Understand what are the values of the people in the organization and see what can we build on that. Because many, many times, if this becomes very, very clear to the people and to the organization, I have seen even at board level when one of the guys said, okay, guys, I now understand why we don't work well together. I'm leaving. I understand that at value level, we are at a very, very different movies and they are leaving. But I can say that when we have the hardest time, or when any time in my life I was going through very, very hard time with any organization, the only thing what connected us was our common values and common beliefs. So, you know, when it's really, really bad, you are sitting down with the people around you and guys, why are we together every day? Let's clarify why are we together every day. And from there, you can have a very, very significant construction. And I do think that in a society, if we would have, not necessarily because we cannot have at global level, but in the community level, if we have these difficult conversations, why are we together? What do we want to build? Nobody will say that I want to build something damaging for tomorrow. Nobody is saying that.
Thank you.
Okay. I will
ask something.
Please.
I was supposed to be only in the introduction, but I got catched up with the workshop. It's really very interesting. I want to ask you something, Magor. If your opinion is that the world is going to a good direction, basically, as a mentality, right? The younger generation is more and more aware about the values, more and more aware about the positive things in life, and more trying to make it accepted, generally accepted, influencing in a good way the world. But what we see that the world is not going to a right direction. So maybe there are forces on the dark side, I don't know, which are counterbalancing the goodwill of the good people. And you said actually everybody pretends to be on the light side of the force. So what is the reason why things are not going well in the world? Mainly in the environmental issues and not only.
You know, I've never seen a person being the bad guy in his own life story. Nobody is being the bad guy in his own life story. Even if I met persons who were, I don't know, building a gold mine, destroying huge amount of territories, he was saying, but I'm not doing that. I'm creating jobs for wonderful people and opportunities and so on. So all the narratives are always positive about yourselves. If you don't have a positive narrative about yourselves, then it's tricky. I have never met that. But the whole idea is, what I do think is that there are no absolute good and absolute bad causes. This is what we need to understand. What we do right now is we split the world in two. We say we are the good guys who wants to save the environment, and there are a lot of stupid people who doesn't understand what we want to do, and they are ignorant, and they are so on and so on, and we are using a lot of words in order to create a bad feelings about them, and we are putting people in defensive. I do think that it's not about necessarily what side are you on, it's about how open you are to listen. I do think that one of the biggest problems right now in the world, that even good guys listen very, very little. We tend to focus on some very strong causes. We take very strong stands, and we say, it doesn't matter if I'm dying here, but I'm defending my cause. And sometimes we miss very, very important arguments. Even, you know, when you think about these discussions about COVID, if you are thinking about discussions about the environment, environmentalists miss very good arguments. For a good time, most of the environmentalists said protecting nature means that we are building a fence around nature, and if local communities are dying around, we don't care because that nature is more important than local communities and everybody else. This is not a good approach. You know, you cannot say that nature is something which is far from us. If I exit my city, Bucharest, or if I exit Tel Aviv, this is where nature starts. In your house, it's nature. How it looks inside your house, probably something similar will be outside. If you are throwing everything around your house, from underwear to socks to everything, probably your behavior will be somewhat similar to outside. But what keeps us is what kind of norms, what kind of behaviors we are defining together as acceptable. And the problem is right now, and this is why I do think that the world is going into the wrong direction somehow, or we are not going to the right way, is that we have two sides on everything. And these sides are rejecting the norms of the others. You know, right now, if you look at COVID, some people are religiously wearing masks and washing themselves every day and keeping the distance and so on. And there are some people who are not doing any of that, and they are doing in spite of the others. So two very contradictory norms. And there is no dialogue between there. There is no mutual listening. If you look at the environment, there are some people who are saying, I care only about the economy, we need to build jobs and so on, because this is the official story. And there are the people who care only about the environment. Where are the dialogue? What are we discussing? Where are the common values what we can actually identify in order to solve the problem. Because when we take very strong stance in our lives, there is no room for collaboration. If I cannot be convinced that I'm wrong, I will not collaborate with you. You cannot convince me of everything. I already made up my mind, and you are just talking in front of me in vain because I'm not listening. We need to listen, even if it's hurtful. I have read, you know, The Walrus, a very good Canadian newspaper, a very a good university professor teaching actually political studies, Democrat, stayed with Trump supporters for months trying to understand why they are voting with Trump, why they are supporting Democrats, and so on and so on. And at the end, he said, I do not agree them, but I understand them. He understood their fears, he understood their issues, he understood why they are choosing a different path than his. And this is the whole idea. We need to understand why the behavior of others is different from us. Because from there is a small or significant change in order to change that.
Magor, I would like to say, first to thank you. It's very interesting to discuss this issue. And to say that in Israel, we are experiencing now a very tight political situation in which we have 3 months of demonstration against the prime minister. And it reminds me of what you said, reminds me, because I think that our prime minister is talking in positive values, but he actually gives at the same time different messages to the public. Now, this is not a political forum that we're talking on, but I think that the gap between his declarations and the values that he promotes at the same time there is a very big gap there, and it's very tricky to understand it. So he uses what you say for his own political aspirations. And the second thing I would like to say, maybe it's the same thing around the world, like people are, I don't know, some places around this world are promoting positive values, but at the same time are actually acting differently. And for general public, it's very difficult to differentiate what is right and what is wrong. You have to be very aware of the gap in order to confront it. The second issue is that you mentioned the two groups and the no listening between the two groups, and there is this new film on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, which describes exactly this issue.
You know, on the first issue, I do think that there is no leader who can live exactly as he talks. All my life, I wanted to be 100% environmental friendly or as less pollution as possible. Sometimes I can make it work, sometimes I can't. The whole idea is how big is the gap between what you are saying and what you are doing. If you are saying one thing and doing the exact opposite, I do think it's not bad leadership. It goes against, you are not a leader anymore. It just cannot happen, you know, to actually convince people for one argument and you are doing the opposite. That's the worst thing a leader can do. And I do think that in the society, this is what is happening. We are looking at the leaders, but fighting our neighbors. You know, I can fight with my neighbor what Trump declared yesterday or what Biden said yesterday. And I'm forgetting that I'm not discussing with Trump and I'm not discussing with Biden, I'm discussing with my neighbor. And we try to simplify the world very, very much. And simplification sometimes is just not good. You know, I always struggle to understand why people need guns, why there is gun right. But when somebody explain to me. It's about defending my family. You know, when you put it that way, you know, it's not a negative value. He says, I do care deeply about my family. I do in a dangerous neighborhood. I don't trust that if we disarm, everybody will disarm. Probably all the guys who are ignoring the laws will still have guns. So the only way to protect my family is to have guns. And I do not agree with his statements, but I do agree with the logic that in his core belief, he is protecting his family. How can you argue with a person who is having such a thing? And I do think that the whole idea is not that, okay, I will take your gun away. It's about how do we make our community safer? How do we create communities where when we do not need guns on the street? How do we create law enforcement which makes us feel safe enough not to be determined to defend ourselves and so on? But again, if we ignore the whole idea, why is he defending his right? What is the core reason? What is the core belief? What is the core idea? We will attack the wrong thing. We will talk about guns and not about family. And it's about family. It's about safety. It's about feeling scared in a complicated world. And also, when you look at environment, when you look at most of the issues, it's about fear. Because most of the people do not understand what changes would propose in order if we want to live in harmony with nature. Most of the people have in their minds that we are going, and I heard that argument many times, we are going back into the caves and we won't have cars and everything will be green and no mobile phones and so on. And this is not what we are going to do. But it's about waste. It's about how wasteful systems do we have around us. You know, when I found out that we are using the territory of China, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan all together to grow the food that we throw away, it's not about giving up, it's about reducing waste. Only if we would have a massive reduction of waste, half of the problem would be solved. But the problem is, you know, that many of the leaders are taking the shortcuts. And this is, you know, our roles as citizens. This is our roles as people. Not let leaders take shortcuts of giving empty and easy promises. Simplifying, oversimplifying things. Can you oversimplify COVID crisis? You cannot. Can you oversimplify environmental crisis? You cannot. Can you oversimplify societal issues? You cannot. These are complicated things, and if we want to resolve them, we need a lot of talking between us. But first of all, we need trust. If I don't trust you, I won't talk to you. We cannot find solutions. And if I'm thinking of Trump or Biden when I wake up and meet my neighbor, I will never trust my neighbor.
Can you detail a little bit something about Romania? What is the situation in Romania in the field of cultural organization, culture of organizations in the late years, and also environmental issues, if you think it's appropriate to mention. So a little bit about Romania as country. You were country manager of World Wildlife Fund, and you are working as a professional in Romania. So that's why I'm asking. And we are the Romanian Cultural Institute, by the way.
And I think that it's harder and harder, you know, to define trends which apply only in one country. So what I do see in Romania right now, but I also see at global level, is that this crisis shaped the society from the bottom. And what I do find, you know, it's a terrible thing what is happening right now, but it's also forcing many organizations to find their values. We are, so until now, you know, 2 or 3, 4 years ago, it was almost unbelievable to discuss with an organization about organizational culture. How do we change? How do we live up to our values? And now almost every day I have a new organization saying, okay, how can we create a culture where people wants to thrive, when people wants to stay? I do think that, you know, all the economic crises, all the big crises are making us to turn towards the values, because the resources are limited. And when you don't have unlimited resources, you need somehow to capture the imagination, the creativity, the energy of the people in different ways. And one of the ways is culture. So right now, what I see many organizations in the state level. This is absolutely mind-blowing to me, that we have more and more public institutions, state institutions coming to us and saying, we realize that how we are functioning for decades is not working out anymore in this modern world. How can we don't want to get rid of the people, but we want to understand how people act in our organization, and we want to create a culture in order to do some good. And this is amazing for me. Public institutions, educational institutions. You know, I had a discussion with one of the biggest universities boards who said to me, you know, we were defining the vision, the mission, what are the goals, and they said, we want to create education when only 40% is about what we teach and 60% is about debate. So they said, we want to change the mindset of the institution in order to create people being able to think critically and being open towards constructive debates. These kind of things are absolutely amazing for me. And what I see, you know, this is what gives me energy. This is what gives me the whole positivism. Because otherwise, if you work in the environmental fields, you have very little reasons to be positive. Because most of my career, all my successes are connected not of what we achieved or what we created, what values we created. They are connected of what distractions we managed to stop. And when all your life it's about stopping, destroying this, stopping, destroying that, it's not very good. You know, just going to my family and, you know, this kind of forest is here because we had a very good campaign, I don't know how many years ago. This is not very uplifting. But when, for instance, we go to southeastern Romania and see bisons, bisons were animals, the biggest mammal in the whole Eurasia, they were disappeared for 200 years. And this summer, I went on holiday in an area where we managed to repopulate with bisons, and then I have seen 60 wild bisons roaming free. So this is when you create value, when you bring something, and you look at the local community who are started to develop tourism, who started to develop local industry, and all of those things just because some animals come back. And then you start to understand how you build up. And you know, to convince hunters in the area, don't go and shoot animals. Go with tourists and make them shoot with their cameras, and you make the 10 times more money. And actually the animal population won't go down. And when you see hunters, okay, coming and saying, okay, do you have some photograph groups which I could take? Then you start to understand this is the way of, you know, because otherwise an environmental organization would say, all the hunters are stupid people, we have nothing to discuss with them. But when you change a bit the approach, things are starting to change. And I do see massive change in Romania, but I also see massive change around us. The whole idea is the tendency of a human being is to go back to what is normal, to what is comfortable, to what is... And this crisis took us out from normal, but now we want to go back. And if we can do something as individuals to stop the going back and saying, okay, guys, we had some very bad things, but we had some very, very good things. Do we need an office for every people in the world? Do we need 7 million offices? 7 billion offices? No, we don't need 7 billion offices. Do we need that much air travel? Because you have seen, we haven't been traveling for 6-7 months, and the world is still... Can we make some real sustainable changes? Yes, we can. How can we make that sure? And this is the danger when some people start to say, let's go back to normal. That was not normal. 67% of the people working in big companies were unhappy before the crisis. Do we want to go back to that normal? The engagement rate in the European Union and in Romania of the people was 10%. This means that only 1 person out of 10 came to the office saying, yeah, great, I want to do something. I want to contribute. 8 persons were saying, no, 6 persons were saying, okay, I will do the minimum to survive here. And 3 persons in every company actively disengaged. They tried not to do anything. Do we want to go back to this normal? I don't think so. So I have a question saying, how does working from home influence the organizational cultural behavior? At the beginning, I think we were in the 3rd month of the crisis, and one CEO said to me, what do you mean organizational culture? There is no culture because everybody is home. And I said, doesn't matter what you were what were you thinking about your organization. Right now, you see the real culture of an organization. If right now we see that only 4 people of 10 are actually doing some work, it's not because of the crisis, it's not because we are working from home. Is there normal behavior? Because how do I define culture, organizational culture? How do we behave when nobody is watching us? So what do you do when nobody looks at you? This is your true culture. And when people went home with no any kind of mechanisms of controlling or observing or monitoring them, that is the moment when you actually see how your organization looks like. If we will notice that only, I don't know, 30% of our society are doing something, this is the society that we live in. We know what is the current culture, and we can define some goals where to go from here. And I do think that this is a very, very valuable opportunity for any organization. Just stay and notice. And I never understood. I have a very, very good mentor who was a Canadian airplane pilot and so on and so on. And he always said, when you go into a new organization, for the first 3 months, don't talk, just listen. And it's very hard because you want to prove your worth. But if you actually listen for 3 months, you will understand what is happening. Most of the leaders, most of the managers has no clue what is happening with his organization. And I do think that in this area, with this period, we will figure it out how we are. Any other thoughts, ideas?
I have a question, Mogab.
Yes.
If you think that there are societies, like you mentioned, the Korean society did a huge change, a quick change with the straws. How would you say, how would you describe the ability of society to change its habits? Like you saw some different societies. Can you compare, I don't know, the Korean society to the Israeli society to the Romanian society?
What is absolutely interesting about Korea is that they have some influencers which are very, very, so building a very, very strong fan base, so tribal subculture, so huge, so strong, that they can change almost instantly behaviors. Like if you look at BTS, if BTS goes tomorrow and declares that, I don't know, everybody should pick a flower, everybody will do that. If BTS says tomorrow everybody should plant a tree, probably 60%.
Yes, I'm sorry. BTS.
BTS is one of the biggest pop bands, K-pop bands. It's the first K-pop band who is actually right now in the American Billboard chart at the first place. So it's very few times it's happening that a non-American band dominating the Billboard. But the whole idea is they have some we are calling them influencers. They're not influencers, they're leaders. A lot of people who started to capture niches of the society, gathering people who define themselves by certain values. And they have a very huge influence on those people. I do think that if the intention is right, changes can be can happen very, very quickly. In Romania, for instance, if I look, the confidence in the leaders in the society, we do not have that kind of leaders. There is nobody in the whole society who just can do something and see, I don't know, 20% of the population following them. We do not have that kind of problems. And I do see this all over Europe. Real leaders started to disappear. And we have manager-like people who refuse to behave like leaders. You know, when Angela Merkel went out and all Europe said, okay, stop the refugees. And she went out and said, we need to let them in. That was a very, very huge leadership demonstration because everybody was asking from one thing and she chose another thing. And I do think that this is what started to be missing everywhere. We want to be liked, and social media pushes there. We want to be liked, but the purpose of a leader is not to be liked. If you are selling ice cream, you will be liked almost by everyone, maybe not by parents. But if you are a leader, you will be disliked by a lot of people.
But you said that the politicians are getting their way of thinking or decide what to do based on what the people are saying, telling them. So,
for instance, if I look at
addiction here.
For instance, if I look at Romania, we started to have new political parties with leaders who don't necessarily overpromise, who are very similar to us. And they are saying, okay, I cannot solve all those big issues. I want to solve this very, very niche, very small issue. And people started to vote for them. And I do think that everywhere, you know, these are the two. We have the total populists who are like promising everything. And we have more and more leaders who are actually living their values. And we have more and more people wanting to see leaders who are living up to their values. And this is the change that we can see in a bigger or in a smaller way in almost every society. But it also depends on the development. It also depends on what kind of aspirations do we have as human beings. There are societies where still the aspiration is to gather as much wealth as possible, and there are societies in which wealth is not anymore the deciding factor. This is not what gives you the respect of the people around you. And I do think that it's about evolution in a way or another. And leaders try to simplify things. If we are talking about only GDP, only about economy, only about wealth, it's simple. You know which are the buttons. I don't need to push 1 million buttons. I need to push only 30 buttons. And that's it.
Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, then I will want to close this session, this masterclass, and to thank Magor for this very inspiring, enlightening presentation. I think we all are more aware about what is happening around us after this presentation, and maybe a little bit more optimistic on the future of our societies and the organizations that we work for. Thank you again, Magor. Thank to everybody who participated here in the Zoom chat room and also on YouTube. Stay close to the Romanian Cultural Institute's weekly events. Stay tuned and have a nice evening. Thank you. Goodbye.
Mulțumesc.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Mulțumesc.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Mulțumesc. Thank you very much.